Adrian, roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vignal,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
and Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
Okay, that brings us to audience communication. I'll start.
Mayor, we can't hear you. Mayor, 1 second. There's no audio for you.
Oh, it's not just me. Good. Now can you hear us, Barb?
Yes, we can hear you. Do you
Okay.
want to start over?
Nope. I think we saw everyone who's online. They shook their heads. I took the sign language. Okay, I'll bring us to our presentation, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're going to have a pretty good lineup today. First, I'd like to introduce Representative April Berg, but before she comes up, I want to give her a little bit of a brief background for those of us who are not familiar. And I wasn't even familiar with a lot of things she's done in her past. She's here to present us with a kind of a legislative recap of the session this year. It was a good experience for staff. And we had a new committee, of course, that we developed that consists of 3 council members. So, but a little bit about her history. Representative Berg served on a number of boards, including the Everett and Edmond School Board. Even close to home, I don't know if you're aware that she actually sat on our planning commission here in the city of Mill Creek as well. She carries many lenses in everything she does. She even had a small company, a small business. She did some work in aerospace, and she sits on various commissions. She's currently the chair of the finance committee. She is also on both on the appropriations committee and the local government committee in the House. So Representative Berg, welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here today. I think I've got a slide presentation that Adrian's gonna put up for me. And I am a woman of a certain age, so I'm not sure that I can read my slides from here. So I'm also gonna have my computer near me for that reason. So I am State Representative April Berg, and I am so excited to be the representative for the city of Mill Creek, as well as the city of Snohomish, and a large part of unincorporated Snohomish County. As the city manager pointed out, I am the chair of House Finance, and I am thrilled to be in that position, both as a state leader, but also a state leader who is right here from Mill Creek. So next slide, please. So I just want to start with the elephant in the room, and that's our special session. I think everybody noticed that we sine-died right on time, 105 days to the minute, and then we had to go right back on May 16th for a special session for a really, really important reason for not just our city, but for cities across the state. And that was to get it right on the Blake decision. So as many of you know, both in this chamber and online, the Supreme Court, our state Supreme Court had a decision that was made a few years ago that in effect decriminalized drug possession. That was a problem. We tried to fix that problem in 2021, and I'll just be frank, we didn't get everything right. So we came back in 2022 and 2023 to try and really do that. And what we ended up with was a bill based on compromise. And I can't say the word compromise enough. That's why we had to go back into special session, was because we had to get this compromise right. So what I voted for, and I'm being super intentional with my words because I think as a state representative, we should own the votes that we take. And I voted for the Blake compromise. I spoke both for the original Blake bill, and I spoke for the compromise bill that we came to. But what I voted for was about $63 million in diversion, treatment, and recovery housing, as well as behavioral health programs for those suffering from substance use disorder. This bill prevents a patchwork of laws that would have led to confusion and, quite frankly, indiscriminate outcomes, community to community, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, and that simply was not good enough. This bill also creates a statewide policy that deals with outreach, treatment, and recovery while providing avenues for accountability and off-ramps for treatment. And I think that's important for communities like Mill Creek because we do believe in carrots and we know that sometimes carrots aren't enough. And so we want to provide off-ramps when folks are making decisions that are not good for themselves or community. But we also want to make sure our communities are safe and secure. So what I will say is that this bill does have criminal penalties with incarceration up to 6 months on those first 2 offenses for substance use disorder or public use. After those first 2 offenses, that third offense would actually trigger a traditional gross misdemeanor, which is 365 days minus 1 day, so 364 days. So just to give you a reality check on what happens when folks come out of incarceration because of drug use, that they are 10 times more likely to die from opioid overdose after incarceration. Incarceration, it severs really their relationship to community, to housing, to employment, and to family. And that's the reason why we see just horrific outcomes potentially when folks are just incarcerated. So again, this approach, this Blake approach is carrot, stick, as well as being a statewide approach. So communities like Mill Creek will not have to bear the brunt alone as we deal with a growing opioid crisis. Next slide. Just to continue, I want to talk about recovery. And again, I put this into a slide deck so that the city can have it. I'm not going to go word for word, but I do want everybody in the city, as well as the folks in this chamber, to be able to refer to this in terms of what we've done for Blake. So we did provide some recovery avenues, and that includes navigator programs, recovery residences, and grant programs for employment opportunities. We did very, very specifically talk about accountability. So this does carry with it a gross misdemeanor, and it can be up to 180 days in jails and a maximum fine of $1,000. It does make public drug use a crime. It is a crime. And so I know a lot of our cities and counties have said, you know, this is a huge issue. It is a huge issue. I'm a mother of 6. I live in this community. Public drug use is abhorrent and it is a crime. And we do have these recovery and navigator programs so that we can maintain that human connection as we help folks with their substance use disorder. And we do have automatic vacation of convictions if people do the right thing, which is seeking treatment, getting help, and staying clean. Because we know, all of us have a family member, a friend, a colleague who may have suffered from this. And at the end of the day, we don't throw people away. They come back into our community, and the more whole we can make them, the better our community is. Next slide. And so just a brief FAQ on Blake, and as I end this portion of it, how can we help people help themselves, right? So we want to peel away that shame associated with substance use disorder. What do we do if someone won't accept treatment? That was a question I heard a lot from folks. This bill provides avenues for accountability with off-ramps if folks are willing to be accountable. And what about our communities that suffer because of untreated substance use disorder? So as we've mentioned in the previous slide, this bill does create a crime of public use. This will give the police the tools to encourage those who need treatment to get help and to get services. I want to give our city, this city, my city, the tools they need to help people get help. Next slide. Let's talk about housing. That's the second most common question I get when I do legislative updates. So we did some good things around housing. So we've got 2 bills that I do want to highlight. One is a bill by Jessica Bateman. It's House Bill 1110. It's what's known as the Middle Housing Bill. We also have a good Berg bill, which is an annexation bill that will hopefully help cities just like Mill Creek. It was requested by Snohomish County. Both of those bills did pass. So what does this mean in terms of budget and money? So for the Mill Housing Bill, we have $519 million dedicated to housing. This creates funds for emergency housing and rental assistance. It has the Covenant Home Ownership Program, the first in the nation type program around helping first-time homeowners who have been in marginalized communities that were specifically restricted by racial covenants throughout the years. There's a great study by UW and Eastern that actually identified, I think, about 40,000 different covenants that restricted a lot of people in our state from buying homes and creating generational wealth. We did allocate additional funding for encampment response and outreach. I've had great conversations with Chief White about that and maybe even some more creative ways to help in terms of encampment cleanup and making sure that our streets are safe and clean and that the cities, as well as the folks that live in the cities, aren't bearing the financial brunt of cleaning up those encampments. Expanding funding for children and youth homelessness. We've increased funding for housing and essential needs. And as far as capital budget, so just to give you an idea with our budget committees, I was referred to recently as one of the four horsemen. We have the four horsemen when it comes to fiscal matters in our state. We have the chair of capital budget, the chair of appropriations, the chair of transportations, and then of course the chair of House Finance. And so between the four of us, the four horsemen, we're able to keep things fiscally running in our state. And so capital budget is another area where folks have a lot of questions. And we did make a historic investment in our housing trust fund of $400 million. And that goes for affordable housing and to decrease homelessness and address our housing crisis. We have an additional $170 million for affordable housing and shelters. And then we have 124 for to ask staff about that because I said, hey, wait a minute, when are you talking about home upgrades? Like, am I getting a deck? Like, what are we doing? The answer was no, I'm not getting a deck. No one is. But what it is going to do is help with weatherization, efficiency, in the form of rebates and home rehabilitation for our neediest of neighbors and also in really communities, a lot of them rural communities that need help getting to more energy efficient homes. So I thought that was a nice one to put on there. Next slide. So just so you know, and I'm not going to go through this, I know we've had conversations with the city as well as advocates around the abatement bill, the middle housing bill, but it does affect cities of different sizes differently. And so for our city, we are a city under 25,000. We are within the contiguous growth of the UGA, and we are a part or adjacent to a city that has 275,000. So my understanding as it stands is that we would only be required to have 2 units per lot in residential zones. And I cannot say this strongly enough that housing HOAs are exempt from the middle housing bill. And I know a large portion of Mill Creek are in existing HOAs. I, as a legislator, believe in promises made, promises kept, and HOAs are contracts that have been signed by both the residents as well as the community, as well as the state government, and we should honor those contracts. So housing associations are not included in the middle housing bill. But for a city the size of Mill Creek, we are looking at 2 units per lot. And if that changes, we are going to have some direct conversations with our legislature about how that does impact our city. Next slide. So just to talk a little bit about the good Berg bill when it comes to housing. So this is around annexation. A city like Mill Creek, this is very important. If the city does decide to annex within our boundaries, we will be eligible, we being the city will be eligible for a 0.2% sales tax credit for the next, I believe, 10 years post annexation, but you need to take advantage of it within the next 5 years. So what this will offset is any of those initial costs around infrastructure, public safety, any needs that aren't met immediately by the additional revenue we get through annexation in those first few years would be offset by this state sales tax credit. So this is not an additional charge to folks who live in Mill Creek. This is not an additional charge to the city. This is the state saying percent of that 6.5% will now come directly to the city of Mill Creek based on the areas that you annex to help you become whole from that annexation. Next slide. Education highlights. So education is our paramount duty, and it is also the place where the majority of our funding goes. Well, we did some great things with special ed, and I will be the first one to say we didn't do enough, but frankly, we didn't have enough money to do everything we wanted to. But we did add $417 million in new funding support for special ed, and we did increase the arbitrary arbitrary cap that we have. I roll my eyes. I wasn't there when this was put on, but we have an arbitrary cap of the number of students that we say a certain district would have in special ed. It's 13.5%. It is literally based on nothing. We've now increased that arbitrary cap to 15%. We need to have that cap go away, but again, that cap also caps the funding that the state provides to school districts for special ed, and that's why we have the cap. It is a hangover from McCleary. It's one that I don't agree with, and I hope we can hopefully eliminate that soon. We did make some more progress in free school meals for all. We have a great bill that does expand access to free school meals to an additional 90,000 students. If you remember about 2 years ago, I had a bill that did pass where our students no longer pay for that reduced price, that silly 40 cents that we used to charge students because they were reduced price. They were very, very impoverished families that we were charging 40 cents. We no longer do that, but now we're, in addition to those students, adding another 90,000 who are community eligible for free lunches and breakfasts. So that was a huge win. And then access to recess. Seems like a no-brainer. Apparently it wasn't. We had to pass a law. So kids now get recess, amazingly, 30 minutes a day. It was a great bipartisan effort from Senator Nobles, as well as newly minted State Representative Lowe. It passed 30 minutes a day, daily recess. Again, it was one of those head scratchers. You sit there and you vote on something, you go, why do we have to vote on this? We had to vote on it, and luckily now kiddos will get that 30 minutes. Next slide, please. So a couple of my personal highlights, 2 things I'm passionate about, and I will tell you, just to be super honest, I love bills when community members like yourselves in this chamber or folks watching at home come to me and say, hey, Rep. Berg, something's wrong. Well, that happened with these 2 bills. One was a mother who lost her son to drowning, tragically. And so we have been working around making water safety more of a priority in our beautiful state that is surrounded by water. And so we have now designated May 15th as Water Safety Day, where educators and those working with children are going to be talking about water safety and dry land education. And it was a bipartisan bill that passed unanimously through both chambers. So we will be talking about funding as well as educational incentives for schools to really, really work hard around water safety education. As we know, tragically, we did have a young person perish in Silver Lake just last summer. And unfortunately, with this time of year, we see tragedies like this all too often. The second bill that for me was a no-brainer was finally eliminating puppy mills, puppies that are bred in puppy mills, sold in our state. On top of that, predatory lending, we had a loophole that allowed for folks to be charged up to 199% interest on dogs that they were purchasing that had come from puppy mills. Yeah, that had to end. And luckily it did. So that bill passed, it was signed. I brought a dog to the bill signing with the governor. And just as a side note, I did not realize it was a pit bull until after, and I got a little social media feedback, like, was that a pit bull in the governor's office? Yes, it was. So, but it was a beautiful dog who was a rescue dog that was rescued from a horrific situation and is as lovey as can be. So next slide. And so lastly, I'm just going to end on some highlights for our local community. We were able to get funding via our capital budget for some wonderful things right here in Mill Creek. One being our City Hall North renovation. Also the DRCC, looking at that becoming a multi-use recreational property. We also were able to do some work in Mays Pond on a park. That's not Mill Creek, but it's Mill Creek adjacent. I know a lot of folks who live in that area say they live in Mill Creek, and maybe one day they will, hint, hint. And then of course, Willis Tucker Park, which is right down the street. We are going to improve the ball lighting there. I know I'm putting my thumb on the scale on that one. I think there's a lot of folks who love our city as much as I do, and they want to be able to put it on their letterhead. So with that, I think the last slide gives you the most important information of all, which is my assistant's contact information. Everybody in this chamber knows that Catherine is my brain. And so to get a hold of me, the best way is to go through her, but also myself as well. I want to be as accessible as possible to everyone, both in this chamber and at home. And just a shameless plug, if you follow me on Facebook, my official site, we do have a new series that the House has allowed me to tape called Berg Bill Basics. And it's a 7-part series on how a bill becomes a law. It is schoolhouse rock for adults. And now having passed 8, 9, 10, 11 bills in 3 years, I felt like I was pretty good at saying, how do we get something done? Well, this is how we do it. So Berg Bill Basics on my Facebook channel. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Representative Berg, and thank you for all you did this session. And we did have a good line of communication. You and Catherine were very responsive, and it was, I think, it was a big help in getting that funding in place that you highlighted right there. Who has questions? Councilmember Cavalier?
I was going to defer to my colleagues first, but happy to do it. Representative Berg, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for your service to our community. It's doesn't go without notice. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You gave us a lot here tonight, but I want to focus a little bit, if I can, on the Blake fixes. Most of the public, I don't think they understand the scourge unless they have a family member going through addiction or have lost a loved one. 6 people in Washington will die every day from overdose. That's a twofold increase, a doubling just over the last 4 years alone. 108,000 across the country last year. And the point I'm getting at here is that conduct without consequences will simply create more poor conduct. These last couple of years, we've been able to see what happens when there's a void. We create this vacuum. And a great example is just the most recent headline in the Snohomish County Jail, where we had 9 overdoses in a 22-hour period, 7 Narcan and 2 that had to be resuscitated. This is happening every day in our community, and it seems like it's just not being taken serious enough that if you get 3 bites at the apple for addiction, and then maybe you'll go to jail and maybe we'll still get you treatment, it just doesn't seem that the folks in addiction are taking it serious enough. So I worry about that. We had a hammer before it, and it's a necessary vessel to get folks out of addiction. They depend on us for being the tip of the spear to get them out of it. So my hope is that, because this fix is no different than what the city put in place as far as a fix, the same sort of punishment, if you will. So my hope is that we revisit this at some point, because it really is just a continuation of more of the same, leaving it a misdemeanor and then potentially a gross misdemeanor. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. And if Mayor Holtzclaw, if I may respond. So, well, thank you for your comments. It is a scourge. And I will say that talking to many constituents each and every day, unfortunately, I can say almost 2 to 1, someone has a relationship with someone who is suffering from or has suffered from substance use disorder. So I wish I could say it's, 1 in 5 or a few people here or there, but it's everyone that I talk to has had some story like that. I think you made a really great point. Even when folks are in jail, not in the cities, but in jail, they're overdosing. And so putting them in jail isn't necessarily going to stop them from overdosing. In fact, they've got access in jail to those same drugs that they had access to on the street. So I think as we look at a fix, part of what we tried to do was not continue the mistakes that we made in the 80s on the war on drugs. It was a war that we lost. And now what we're doing is trying to say, what can we do in terms of actual data? What can we do in terms of what works for people, for families? Because as I mentioned in my presentation, we don't throw people away. People get out, even with a felony. In fact, that part of that 180 days that you see in the gross misdemeanor, kind of that modified gross misdemeanor that we placed in the Blake fix, that was based on the studies done of how long a traditional person got when it was a felony. So let's be clear, when this was a felony, people weren't getting 5 years. They weren't even getting a year. They were on average getting about 180 days. And so when folks say what was working, it actually wasn't. And the reasons that it wasn't working wasn't because we needed to be harsher, but because we really didn't understand the science around addiction. And so for me, what's really encouraging is both the carrot and stick approach to this. Again, as a mother in this community, public drug use is absolutely a scourge. We needed to stop that. We needed to put tools in place for our officers to stop that. We need to put tools in place for folks to be very much encouraged, much like they were in the past, to get help. And that's what we did. But we also needed to sink a lot of money into that help, into treatment, into recovery, into housing, and into employment. And that's why I wanted to highlight what happens after incarceration. I need to be really clear. For every person we put in jail for substance use disorder or public use or a crime related to that, like a burglary or a carjacking or something else more horrific, they all get out. They all get out. And I am not saying that to scare anyone. I am not saying that to say they should and what should or shouldn't happen in our criminal justice system. Factually, we don't have enough money in the world to lock people up forever and throw them away. And thankfully, we would never do that because of our basic core humanity. And so as a result, we have to figure out how do we make folks whole when they come out, because they will absolutely come out and they're going to come back to our communities because we want them here, because they're our brothers and they're our sisters, they're our sons, they're our daughters, sometimes they're our parents, and sometimes they're our grandparents. And we want them to come home so we can help make them whole. So we took a carrot and stick approach. We took an approach, it sounds like much like what the city wanted to do. We are not throwing people away, but we're also not throwing communities away. And we're protecting communities and we're putting our money where our mouth is. And I say we as a state legislature. So we are giving communities the tools they need financially to help with this addiction. There is not enough money in the world to lock everybody up every year forever. Minimum $40,000 a year per prisoner, minimum. That's if you have no issues, no detoxing. And Councilmember Cavallari knows that. You're in law enforcement. You know how expensive it is to incarcerate someone. The city of Mill Creek doesn't have enough money to incarcerate everybody forever for using drugs. But we do have enough heart to say, we're going to help you get help. And if you don't want to choose that, you're going to have to do this option for a set amount of time. And then we're going to have some off ramps and some treatment options when you get out. But thank you for that question. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the city. If there are holes, if there are gaps, if there are needs, Chief White, as well as everyone in this chamber knows how to get a hold of me. And I will tell you, I am batting 1,000. When I have been asked for something, if there is a need, I have tried to fill that need. If you see a hole, please contact me so that I can help fill that hole, because you are not alone. The city of Mill Creek is not alone. And I am there in Olympia to help you. So thank you.
Other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, but I wanted to take this moment to really just thank Representative Berg for all the hard work that she did working with us to go to bat for us to get the funds that she has managed to find for us in the state budget so that we can work on getting some HVAC units put in City Hall North that's much needed, and also money to go towards the DRCC, which will be a huge investment in our community. And I appreciate all that hard work. And also I really appreciate your willingness to come in and talk and find out what's going on and to meet with Chief White and see what he recommends and what things our city needs and just try to come up with what's best for our city. And I just wanted to make sure that you're thankful for that, all that hard work that you've done for us. I really appreciate it. And I think our community is going to benefit from a lot of those things that you've been able to bring back to us. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Paddock.
We're sure there would be others, so excuse me. Rep Berg, I just want to thank you so much for the advocacy and support of our city, from the capital investments to the grants, protecting our single family home communities with that HOA exemption. Huge plus for the city. And I can't say enough, and I said this, I think it was a couple of meetings ago when Rep Donahue was here. I can't say enough about having legislators with your level of influence and impact advocating for our city. We punch above our weight because of you, Senator Lovick, bringing back what we need as a city to thrive, both from a safety perspective, from a commercial perspective, and support of our citizens. So you very much.
Thank you.
Else? Good. Thank you, Representative Berg, and we look forward to working with you next session.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Martin, next.
The next presenter, I meet with on a quarterly basis to provide a City of Mill Creek update, and we tend to have discussions on kind of where Sno-Isle Library is going. in the future. And I'm proud to be a partner with Sno-Isle and welcome the executive director of Sno-Isle, Lois Langer-Thompson.
Thank you so much. Mayor Holtzclaw and members of the council, I'm Lois Langer-Thompson, the Executive Director of Sno-Isle Libraries. And along with me is a familiar face to many of you, Darlene Weber, who is the Mill Creek Library Manager. And behind me is Vanessa Gutierrez, who is our Community Engagement Manager. So we appreciate this opportunity to connect with you and provide an update. As you probably know, Sno-Isle Libraries is governed by a 7-member Board of Trustees. 2 represent Island County and 5 represent Snohomish County. And we currently are recruiting for an opening to start in 2024. So if you know anyone who's interested, it's on our website and we would love to have them apply. Sno-Isle Library centers our work around equity, diversity, and inclusion to help us achieve of connecting everyone with their library. We're committed to creating welcoming and inspiring spaces to bring our community together. The Mill Creek Library is a cornerstone of our community. While the community voted to officially annex starting on January 1st, 2006, the community gained access to the larger collection, currently at 1.8 million items to choose from, back in 1998 when it was a contract library with us. The library is a place where we gather for learning, reading, and to seek and exchange information and ideas. The power and value of a community place is seen every day at the Mill Creek Library. And as you'll see, this is our impact in on the next slide, you'll see some of the numbers. But Mill Creek is one of 23 libraries, and it is one of our most heavily used libraries in the district. Sno-Isle Libraries will continue its commitment to working closely with our communities to make our libraries welcoming, inclusive, and easy to use. The library supports our local businesses through access to information on related businesses, growing their customer base, finding demographic data and market insights, and learning a new skill with LinkedIn Learning. And all of that can be done free with your library card. The library is also removing barriers by connecting our community to the beautiful outdoors by having Discover passes available to borrow, also free with your library card. And the library helps our community discover something new with genealogy, auto repair, magazines, consumer reports to Martha Stewart, world news collections, and of course we have ebooks and digital audiobooks. And you guessed it, all free with your library card. Engaging all children in our community is a priority for the library. And of course, it was great fun to see a child with a Sno-Isle library book when I walked in tonight. We provide early learning support, STEM education programs, student access cards, and homework help resources, all free with your library card. We're pleased to support and work with Mike Todd, who I believe is on the call, and city staff on securing state. He is on that? Oh, he's right. Oh, there he is. I thought you, never mind. That was, it's to remember, right? So city staff on securing state funding, championed by our state legislative delegation, and for the city to making some needed improvements for the library building. In addition to the $200,000 in state funding, Sno-Isle Libraries will be investing additional funds to repair the floors, provide new HVAC, and upgrade all restrooms to full ADA accessibility standards. We appreciate our partnership and working closely with the city staff on the scope and a finalized timeline. It's also been great to work with City Manager Martin Yamamoto as we continue to think about library services as part of the larger Mill Creek plan for the community moving forward. His focus, his inclusion, and his innovation are valuable to Sno-Isle Libraries, and I appreciate meeting with him quarterly. So thank you to Martin, Mike Todd, Scott Harder, and Jody Hawkins as well for all of their continued partnerships. Sno-Isle Libraries is building infrastructure, and we're continuing to invest in Wi-Fi access for our communities. We serve on the Snohomish County Broadband Action Team, and we're working toward equitable digital access for all. This access allows all of our community members to access telehealth, to engage in job interviews, and to find the information they need. We'll continue to have laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots for checkout and provide that Wi-Fi access at the library. This essential service was prevalent during those, remember those windstorms last fall and the power went out? I was 5 days without power, not that I'm complaining, but our internet usage at the libraries supported individuals and businesses without power or access to the internet during that time. We serve as a community point of distribution across our county, and of course, access to voting resources. We have a new EDI section that was added to our snoisle.org site to celebrate and explore 3 areas: accessibility, citizenship, and EDI programs and services. Customers can browse the website in 7 languages: English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And we enhance the in-language browsing capabilities for a better search experience. Unfortunately, we do have wildfires here in the Pacific Northwest, but we are happy to serve as a heating and cooling center during those wildfire seasons. And that's part of the importance of the HVAC upgrade so that people have a safe place to go for clean air. And now I'd like to turn over to Darlene to share a little more information on what's happening here at the Mill Creek Library.
Thank you, Lois. Good evening, everybody. Good to be here. First and foremost, I want to thank you. As you know, the Mill Creek Library is a small, busy library. We don't have a meeting room. So we are starting a writers series next month, and it's thanks to Jody and Scott allowing us to have community space here. We also have a monthly community engagement meeting that is very successful, and we hold it right at this table here in the council chambers. And we have nonprofits, government, Jody and Scott attend. We have education. We have just a broad group of community members working really hard to provide services for Mill Creek. I will say that is one of the meetings I come out of every month, and I just feel so lighthearted because to have that many people at the table talking about the issues that are happening here in the greater Mill Creek area and knowing that they are hard at work to address those issues. It's just lovely to be a part of that. And you are all absolutely welcome to attend too. I want to let you know, as Lois said, we have a very diverse staff, and particularly at Mill Creek, we've had for a long time a very diverse staff. We have a Hindi staff member who's been doing Diwali and Holi programs. We regularly do our Hispanic Heritage Month. We do programs there. And we just started last month a Japanese story time. We have a native Japanese person that has come to work at Mill Creek. His first Japanese story time had 17 people, and then the next time it doubled to over 30 people. So there is a need for diversity in our programming, and we are trying to mirror our community and so that they can come to the library and see their own faces in the work that we do. So that's been very successful. Another demographic that we've been very successful for decades has been our teens. We really work a lot with the schools and with the teens. We have something called Teen Game Night, which is once a month. We close the library. We've always closed the library at 6 on Friday. We reopen at 7 for just teens. And this happens to be those very interesting teens who are very, I like to call them eclectic and lots of varied interests that maybe don't have places they're going on Friday night. They love it. It's a very successful program that we've had at the library for years. And their parents love it too, because they can drop them off at the library for 2 hours and have a date night. So that's been another one. Oh, I do want to mention that last month, we had 3 students from France attend. It was very odd. They were in the United States visiting family in Edmonds, and they just wanted to get out and hang out with American kids and practice their English. So they showed up on our door. So they just hung out and played Jenga. So we're providing those needs in the community. Of course, the city of Mill Creek and our demographic around our service area, very, as Lois said, big emphasis on education. So our friends of the library have been great at funding our prize books. Every year I've been working at the Mill Creek Library for over a decade, and every year we are breaking our prior year record for summer reading registrants and summer reading finishers year after year after year. Matter of fact, I gave my friends the budget for the prize books this year, and they said we better add quite a bit of, they added another $1,000 to it just because they know that's how many kids read in Mill Creek. Let's see. Do want to thank the Friends of the Library who fund a lot of our programs that we would not have available to us otherwise. And yeah, this is the part where I say enough already, because I can go on all day about the great things that are happening, talking about the pride I have in serving this community and the pride I have with the staff and what they do is an easy ask. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Lois.
You can see why Darlene is one of our favorite library managers, and you're lucky to have her here. So we are happy to be a resource. I would love to invite you to come for a visit. It doesn't take a long time to walk through the Mill Creek Library if you haven't been there in a while. I'd love to meet you there with Darlene and show you around and answer any questions. But thank you again for your time, and we'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple comments and then I guess I do have a question, but first and foremost, I just want to thank Darlene for all her hard work. I see her so often when I'm in the library. And I really just want to emphasize that the library is the heart of our community. So many people are coming through that library for services to get books, to use the computer, to do printing. And you're there to help with all those services. And we are through there so often, and you're really providing such a need for the kids to be able to get the books that they need so that they can really start to love reading at a young age. And you just have so many fabulous programs. And I did see the flyer for the game night when I was there the other day, picking up the book that Cora was reading when you saw her. And I thought that was a really neat idea. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. But I just think there's just so many programs and so many things that our library does for our community, and not everyone realizes all the things that you are doing and how much you're touching each part of the community, and especially those of us with young children, just all the things that you're doing and how you're enriching their lives. And I know I could just rave all day on the librarians. They've been so helpful in helping Cora find books in the range that she needs to be in, and the interest that she has, which is very limited at the moment because it has to involve cats. And they've just been phenomenal in helping and putting things together for her. So I just really appreciate that. I want everyone to know all the hard work and what great, phenomenal librarians we have over there, eager to help and give information. And with that, my question is something that's concern for me and on my mind is I really want to know, what are we doing? Are we seeing any attempts at banning books in our libraries? And how are we handling that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is happening. You're certainly seeing it in the news. I think that Sno has very proactively had a really great collection development policy, and we have an amazing staff that chooses the collection, whether it's books or audiobooks, magazines, and really a commitment to making sure that every viewpoint is represented. So whatever you're looking for, you can find at our library. And so with that as a basis, one of our firm beliefs is that you should choose what's best for you and your family, that should be left to the individuals to choose. So we want to make sure we have the broadest selection available and help you do that. So I think that has held us in good stead in the community. I think people see that our commitment is to provide as many viewpoints as possible, and that free and open access, and welcome people in to make those the best choices for themselves and their family.
You and thank you for all the hard work that all of you are doing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Councilmember Jacquet.
Everything that Mayor Pro Tem said. Pause there. I really am obsessed with all of your social media that all of Sno-Isle does, of course. And then with Mill Creek, I loved watching the stuffies that spent the night. Kids could drop off their little stuffed animals and they had a great time. I never wished I was somewhere else more than that moment, because I would have loved to help those stuffies be moved around or help them in their journey at the library. It was adorable and something that we followed along. My sons can't let their stuffies out of their sight, so they couldn't visit, but maybe in the future they will. They loved it. I also want to thank you. My children attend Penny Creek Elementary, and I found out recently that they're unable to do their kind of summer reading or their opening of their library that they normally do. And so I was speaking to the librarian, and she said that working with Sno-Isle or with Mill Creek Library to be able to do a presentation and to really highlight the summer reading program. Last year, my sons and I, we had the pleasure of making a weekly or bi-weekly trip to all the different libraries in both Sno-Isle and then surrounding areas, just to see what they look like. Picked up a bunch of new library cards, but I really appreciate that because it's not always feasible to be able to have the library hours at a public school or to have the staff to man it that way. So being able to create those partnerships, I think is incredibly important. So I thank you for thinking about all the different ways that you can help work with our community. And lastly, just thank you for acknowledging the staff. I think we have incredible staff I think everyone here thinks that we have incredible staff and we're very lucky to have them. And it's wonderful to hear others acknowledge them and that we are making those strides to really feel like a full community. And I'm obsessed with Stephanie's or Mayor Pro Tem's quote. I even wrote it, our heart of our community, because I really agreed, and it gave me this visual of like, well, then our parks and trails, what are that? And then city halls are brain, and so then I started having this really good visual, and I actually really need that because I think sometimes we forget about what makes all the pieces to a city and to a community. So thank you for taking the time for being here. Thank you for having such an amazing service. I have to go pick up 2 books that I happened to get an email saying that they were ready for me and I better hurry up. So I will go get those home edit books tomorrow. But so thank you for your time. I really greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's really, I appreciate the ways that each individual, there's a collective power in the 23 libraries in the large district that we are, but ultimately you relate to your local community and you have those memories, whether it's, dropping for teen night or whether it's dropping your, what was it? The cuddly up? No, the stuffing animal off. The stuffed animal sleep, right? Those are the memories that are held forever and attach you to the community and keep you engaged with the community over the long haul. So it's a lot of pieces, but thank you for noticing that. And yes, the most amazing staff.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the work you do. I had a question though about as far as folks returning to the library. I know once the pandemic hit, we had a big trail off of people visiting the library. Have the numbers returned to pre-pandemic levels?
They're close, depending on the library. I'll let Darlene speak specifically to Mill Creek. It's been slow, but the other thing is we're still providing more choice. So we still do curbside pickup, which if you have kids and it's raining and to not have to schlep everyone, I come from the Midwest with the snow and ice, to be able to just drive up and have someone bring it. So we have more flexibility. Our ebooks are still continuing to grow. We have one of the largest growth rates of ebook usage in the country. So we're really proud of that. But I'll let Darlene talk about specifically about the return to in-person service here at Mill Creek.
Yes, thank you. Right, during the pandemic, I will just say that we began to have, again, record-breaking numbers using the library because people were isolated at home, right? So I call it like fajita pickup because we knew about that first, right? You order in and then you come to the door and pick them up and we'd have their books ready, right? So, and then when we opened up, it's just so heartfelt, people saying, if you weren't here during that pandemic, I don't know how I would have gotten through this. You were the connection I had. Since then, it's just been amazing. Our story times have 50, 60, 70 kids in them. Our baby story, it's just been exponential, the growth that we've had. So it's been incredible. Yes, they're back. The numbers are just high. I was going to say exactly what Lois said. People are, because they learned about it in the pandemic, they're using many, many more of our e-resources. So where before we were trying to get people up to speed that you can get ebooks, you could get e-magazines, you can get the e-auto repair and consumer, all of that, consumer reports online. The pandemic, I would say that's what really helped kind of push us over where people are like, oh, we still have access to all this library material from online. So yeah, I would say we're back in business. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for being flexible with that. And I guess getting the water to the horse, so to speak. So appreciate that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Well, thank you again for the
Great.
presentation.
Thank you
Look forward
very
to seeing you again. Hey, who's going to take us through our old business?
All right, old business. So the next item is a resolution to bring it forward to authorize city manager to approve ARPA funding for our OTAK contract that our consultant that will be working on the comprehensive plan. Thanks.
All right, so this should be pretty straightforward. So the Growth Management Act was put in place about 30 years ago to provide a framework for the state, regional, county, and local planning coordination. So under the act, cities and counties are required to develop a comprehensive plan to manage our growth. Mill Creek is currently working on our comp plan, and we do have to be finished by the end of 2024. So in February, council approved ARPA projects that included $250,000 for the city's comprehensive plan update. So that ordinance specified that final contract approval for ARPA projects were subject to council's final approval. So that is why we are here today. So that in April, the OTAK contract professional services agreement was approved to allow the city manager to sign that. And that contract was for $381,000. So 250 of that had been budgeted to come out of ARPA, but we did not have that final contract approved via ARPA. So this is us bringing that contract back. I did attach that and the addendum to include the ARPA needed language. So really, we are just bringing a resolution to council to approve a portion of the OTAK contract to be funded through ARPA to prepare the city's 2024 comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing no questions, are there any?
Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion if I can see it. It's not on my screen. And I know the council has already pretty much, I mean, we've all gone through this, so this is just really just a formality at this point to appropriate the funds. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to appropriate a portion of the city funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act to pay for a portion of consultant services in the preparation of the city's 2024 comprehensive plan update.
Second.
Grant, do we need to make clear in the motion that the amount that's authorized in the motion, it's in the resolution, but the motion doesn't need to, okay. We have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
just to clarify, I didn't hear a response. We do not have to put the dollar amount in the proposed motion?
No, it's in the resolution. Grant said it didn't need to be in the, so it's been properly moved.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. New business.
Thanks, Mayor. So now we have a resolution for the use of the MRSC Small Works roster. We have Director Todd presenting. Thank you.
So I'm not clear on where the presentation is, and Joe's help or.
I think Joe said he's loaded them all up at the bottom. You can just open it up and.
You have to hit, I can remote in, I'll assist.
I got it, thanks. And share screen.
Yeah, then you just share screen from Zoom.
Apologies for TV's noise.
There we go.
Thank you, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Tonight we want to talk about Small Works roster. It's kind of arcane, but it's an important thing for us. It's a tool that's very important for us to have available. So I wanted to bring that to you tonight. So a little bit of background. Under RCW 3904, all public works projects must be competitively bid. And you're typically used to that when we do a large project, we talk about design, bid, build kinds of contracts. We put those out, we advertise them, look for an RFP, we get a bid, we make an award. You're very involved in that kind of process. When we have small projects, and the limit is $350,000. There's a small works, public works process that is much easier to do. And you are allowed under 3404-155 to create what's called a small works roster. A city can create that roster, or you can enter into an ILA to use another city's roster, another agency's roster, or there's a thing called a roster service provider, and the city can sign on to that. And that's what we've done in the past. Our procurement manual and past practices employed that small works roster. We had an ILA with Linwood prior to 2007, but about 2007, Linwood said we're getting out of that business, and MRSC started their roster, which has now grown to be a large roster. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so we switched to MRSC in about 2007. Turns out that per state law, you need to have an authorizing resolution to be able to have a small works roster. We've never had that, couldn't find it anywhere. And so our staff uncovered that. And so that's why we're here tonight, is to have that authorizing resolution. We need that. We need to be able to renew our membership in MRSC. It expired last month. So we're kind of on pause right now in doing projects because we don't have access to the roster. So that's why we're bringing it to you tonight. Without that, we could go ahead and small works projects where we take every little fence repair or every whatever repair and have to advertise it, have bids, open those bids, award the project. So it's much easier to do with the small works roster for the kinds of things that typically Keegan is going to do for replacing a fence or replacing a street light that got taken down by an accident. Small works roster from MRSC is widely used. 674 agencies are using it. There's 1,100 contractors. That's the list that we go to shop, where we are shopping for. We got to find 3 competitive bids or 5 competitive bids, depending what the size of the project is. We go to that list to shop. It turns out all Snohomish County cities and towns use the MRSC roster. Our water utilities, the school district, the fire agency use the roster. Most of the counties on the state, including most in the greater Puget Sound area, use it. Notably, Snohomish County doesn't. They have their own roster. They are doing their own agency thing. I think they probably got a good roster they like using. So you could only be on one set of rosters, and they've chosen to do that. It does not, to make it clear, it does not preclude the city from using cooperative purchasing agreements. So when we go to the state to buy vehicles, or we just have an ILA with Snohomish County, was just done a little bit ago. You guys approved that. That is for cooperative purchasing. That allows us to piggyback on their contract for purchasing a pickup truck or purchasing other kinds of equipment. So the two are not exclusive. You can do both. There's a flyer from MRSC that talks a little bit about it. I want to direct you the ideas there in the green. One of the things that they do that we'll have them do for us is, in essence, is that they verify businesses meet minimum service requirements to work with Washington public agencies. Annually, they have to advertise people that are on the roster, give them an opportunity to add themselves to the roster, and all kinds of other administrative uptake. You see down there at the bottom there, it ranges from $135 to $1,145, depending on how much purchasing you do. We're on the small end of that. It costs us $135 a year. Beyond the small works roster, it also includes a list of A&E firms that we would use for like design engineering for small projects. It also includes the vendors roster. So when we talk about the small public works roster, that's what's most important to us, but the rosters together, the service includes all 3 of those. Now there's overhead in maintaining that roster. Something we don't have to do is annual announcements, advertising, recruiting, vetting firms that are on the roster. So it gives us an easy way to shop with firms that are signed up to work with municipalities, and they understand the rules, and it's much easier for us to work with them. In researching this, found out that the city attorney, Grant Degginger, found out that the MRSC has been asked to replace the Department of Commerce role in statewide procurements. I think that's upcoming. I'm not exactly sure what the deadline is on that, but I think it's
they will have to do a statewide roster by the July 1, 2020.
When we talked about the state contract, I think it's then going to be taken over by MRSC because it's kind of a one-stop shop. So it's one of the many things that MRSC does for us as cities and counties and municipal governments in the state of Washington. As I mentioned, we're up to $5 million in purchasing. It's $135 a year. It's one of the best deals we've got going. Any questions?
Thank you, Director Todd. Any questions? Councilmember Ellison.
Do the businesses have to pay a fee to be listed on the service?
I do not believe so.
Yes, they do.
Do they pay it? They pay a fee? I don't think
It's not.
a large fee. It's probably not.
It varies. They're depending on the roster. The small works roster is fairly nominal. Then there's professional services, which are not surprisingly a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Duque.
That's my question as well.
The other one I had is, I'm curious to know about when you're choosing from the small roster, what are some of the things that you consider? Like when you're actually, what makes people, what makes companies stand out? Or what are you looking for?
So in our procurement manual, different levels of purchases require different levels of evaluation by us. And so if it's below $10,000, we're allowed to call those people and get oral quotes from those folks. If it's more than that, we got to get written quotes. If it's more than, I can't remember the number of the limited works, then we have to get 5 quotes.
About 50,000.
50,000, okay. And then that as long as limits is changing. What we're looking for typically is somebody that's done business with us before is easy. Somebody that's local. So remember that 1,100 includes people across the state. So if a fencing company, we're looking for fencing companies that do business in Snohomish County, and maybe we've done business with them before, but we do try to make sure we spread the business. And a lot of times who we used last time is not available this time because they're doing some other business. So it's really handy to be able to go get three quotes pretty quickly on these items. One of the things that MRSC is also chartered to do is look at the DBE business elements of it too. So they also make sure the roster includes those kinds of folks. Go out and solicit and make sure those folks, that it's not a hurdle for them to be on that list and make them recognize, help them recognize that that's a good place to look when governments are shopping.
Perfect. I think you knew exactly. That was my additional question with that. And then curious, obviously I don't think you would name names, anything like that, but do we have a lot of Mill Creek businesses that are already part of the roster?
I don't know of that many. You think about it, we don't have a lot of those kinds of businesses operating. I would venture a guess that a small construction firm that had location in Mill Creek could be on that roster, but I can't recall. Maybe Laurel remember some numbers.
And maybe a lot was the wrong word. I was just saying comparable to like how many businesses, that we have that would fit that criteria. Do we know if any of those are already part of that roster? If not, I'm always curious to see how we can make sure that they know that that's something that they should be a part of, because that's why we can't, that we're not working with them, that kind of a thing.
That's a good point. We do have it on our website. Right now, we've said we are no longer on the roster, but it is on our website. If you come to our website and look for doing business with Mill Creek, where contractors come and look, there's a little blurb on there that says, if you'd like to be on the roster, we're on the MRSC roster normally, and here's how you will get on it. So we advertise it through the website, but we're not proactively reaching out to people. That might be a business opportunity for us to help our partners.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cavalieri.
It sounds like
I was just gonna add, there's a competitive element to it.
Mhm.
So it makes it so we're not having to go get those 3 bids.
Yes.
So that could be a reason some businesses get excluded, because they weren't the lowest bidder.
Right, when we get the bid, correct. But I'm talking about just being participating on the list.
Right, so on the MRSC roster, to be a part of that, if there are certain services and they say, hey, we want someone to provide this service, there's a competitive aspect to that.
Perfect. Thank you. I think it's just making sure that our business, our any local, are aware of that process, and they may already be, but just curious to know what that looks like. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And just for, I guess, conversation's sake for anybody that's listening, we're not bypassing the legislative process here or the bid process. This is really just, I guess, memorializing what we've already been doing, that we just, for some reason, for this amount of time, we forgot to do X back in 2007. So I support it. The MSRC is a trusted source for vendors, and I'm happy to make a motion.
Councilmember Ellison has a question.
So could we just talk about that legislation one more time? You have to be part of an existing list. Is that what the state law was that you uncovered? You have to pass an ordinance to join.
In order to be to utilize the MRSC roster, the city council has to adopt a resolution authorizing it. And what research uncovered was that the city council had never adopted a resolution authorizing it. So this is what we're asking you to do tonight. So
Okay, so if it wasn't to join the MRSC roster, it would be to join some other roster, but we have to join a roster in order to take advantage.
or we could do our own, but it
Yeah.
would be fairly time consuming to do that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I think it was, you think back about it, before they had the small works roster process, every city was supposed to has ever been in business. And somebody probably said, hey, this is kind of hard. And we said, well, can make a list of qualified vendors and pick off that list. And that, to be able to do that, I think we probably had to have authorizing legislation from a council to say it's okay to have our own local list instead of putting everything out in the newspaper and bidding it every time. So I can see that that's probably where this came from. Over a period of time, that became tedious for individual cities to do it. So they came up with the ILA process for using the shared roster, or then this roster services organization, and MRSC is up on that.
Any further questions? Councilmember Cavalier, would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd move to adopt a resolution establishing a small public works roster process to award public works contracts, a consulting services roster, and a vendor roster for goods and services not related to public service contracts.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Director Dodd. Okay, we have no proposed new initiatives and no study sessions tonight. So that brings us to the consent agenda, which is item A, approval of checks number 66074 through 66139 and ACH wire transfers $283,648.93. The audit committee was Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Paddock. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions, Mayor.
And item B, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $308,870.30. Any exceptions?
No
No
exceptions.
exceptions.
And item C, a city council meeting minutes of May 2nd and May 9th, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved unanimously. City manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. A handful of reports. First one is on May 11th, the city of Mill Creek held their first in a number of years, employee recognition event. So we had approximately about 60 attendees across all departments. It was an opportunity for myself and the chief to present to our employees a number of types of awards. I presented the milestones across 19 employees who have put in a combination of 284 years of service in the city of Mill Creek at different levels, including 5, 10, 15, 20. There was no 25, but there were 2 30-year awards. I recognize those. The first one is Jody Gunderson, who's been here for 32. And also our Sergeant Connor has also been here for about 32 years as well. I think they started within a week or two between them. Sergeant Connor will be leaving us on June 15th, retiring from the city of Mill Creek. Chief also presented some awards regarding different functions across PD, and so it was a successful event. It was good to see a lot of our employees come together, and I think it's a very positive move in the right direction. One staffing update. Pleased to announce on June 1st, we will have a new deputy city clerk, Mary Davis. And so when she does arrive, we'll bring her into council and have her introduce herself, and we'll provide a little background on where she's worked in the past few years and her experience. I would like to thank Commissioner Mike Kidd. He's going to be not continuing to hold his position as Civil Service Commissioner. And so we will be going out and posting that for advertisements for a short period of time to get a number of applicants and candidates so that we can choose a new commissioner, or which is appointed by myself. A reminder that on Monday, the 29th at Memorial Park, we will have a Memorial Day ceremony as well. Reminder, June 20th to the 23rd in Spokane, Washington, there's the AWC annual conference. So I'm not attending, and I'm not sure if I don't believe any staff are attending, but I just want to remind council that It's an event that usually electeds do council, so it's an option for all of you as well. One last reminder, our July 4th regular meeting is moved to July 5th via code. So we will have a regular meeting on July 5th, Wednesday. And that's all my reports. I'm going to hand it over to our finance director to provide a brief financial report. PDF should be in your packets.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor Holtzclaw, City Council. Good evening. I am happy to report that the 2022 annual financial report was submitted to the State Auditor's Office last week. This is the basis of our financial audit for Q4 of 2023. Also, we are modifying the format of the financial reporting. We will do the investment and quarterly financial reporting a more in-depth via presentation, while the monthly reports will be done via the staff reports during council meetings. For our April 2023 financials, the Finance Committee reviewed the report and has provided some feedback, which I've incorporated tonight. The agenda report covers the economic conditions that we have through April. Our CPI national average is now at 4.9%. Seattle metro area is at 6.9, down from 8% from February of 2023. Also, our federal interest rate has increased again by 0.25%. Now it's at 5% to 5.25%. Our unemployment rate for Washington State improved. It is now at 4.3%. And our Seattle home prices, however, are down 9.4% over the year. So for the 4-month period, our benchmark is at 16.67%. And our general fund revenues of 2.8 million is about 12.2%. And not surprisingly, sales tax, miscellaneous revenue, and intergovernmental are above the benchmark. For the intergovernmental revenues, it includes the $15,000 that we received as reimbursement from the state DOC for the GMA update for our consultant. And then our miscellaneous revenue, our interest returns are at 4.92% versus the 0.41% a year ago. Councilmember Steckler, though, raised some questions regarding the fines and penalties, which are tracking below the benchmark. It's at 3.2%. And this includes about majority of this is the civil and traffic infraction. And I reached out to Chief Stan, who provided the following statement, which I'm going to read tonight. So he said that in January to May of 2022, the department made 712 traffic contacts. And this year, the department has made 886 contacts with the same time frame. So we are seeing a 24% increase in traffic contacts, and officers are using their discretion to make appropriate enforcement decisions as to when to write infractions and when not to, which is consistent with our community expectations. The projected budget was very aggressive for the department's current staffing levels. However, we will have 4 student officers being released from training in the next few months, which we anticipate will boost contacts and likely the revenue. For our general fund expenditure, we are at 3.6%. That's about 1% down from our benchmark. And that includes salary and benefits for 4 months at 2.2 million. And then, of course, our contract services of 829, which includes 265 for legal services, and the rest are for M&O. Of the departments that are high, we have the legislative, IT, and the non-departmental. For the legislative, it's tracking at 23.7%, but that's because we erroneously coded legal services that were spent for certain ordinances and initiatives that council has been working on, like the homeless encampment, the shopping cart, and one other, the boards and commission. So, but we realized that, and so we're moving that out of legislative and moving those into city manager's office, but will be at some point, I believe, we will be providing a tracking or a report back to you of our legal expenses at some point. Also of note, the police, which is about 15% right now of that's spent on their budget, does not include any salary, but salary adjustments. So that would still be coming forward. And then recreation is the lowest spending at 3.3. So recall the instructor payments are captured in this department, and we anticipate those to go back up come spring and summer with the programs opening. Lastly, our REIT capital fund budget, capital projects fund, is also tracking very low. It's at 9% revenue right now. But we expect to collect more in 2024. This is one of the things that we promised that we'll be watching for potential budget adjustment come mid-by. And also the 1.5 million of state funding for our North City Hall improvement and DRCC will be another budget adjustment come mid-by. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Steckler.
Thank you for getting me that request out to the chief regarding the fines and penalties, but I'm still very concerned about that. This has been an ongoing area where we're failing to hit our mark, and currently we should be at 16% of budget, and we're at 3.2%, which is significantly below. And when I hear that we have traffic infractions at a significant increase of 24%, and yet year to date we've only generated $9,000, either the discretion is not to write tickets, or the issue is we're not collecting on fines. But I think we need to determine one way or the other what it is. And then that budget amount I may be wrong, but I thought it was based on historical. We're not going to hit it, and we might as well, either realize why we're not going to hit it and be prepared for that a budget adjustment on that. But I think there's just some questions here about why fines and penalties is not being enacted or collected. I don't know which it is, but that I'm happy we're doing more traffic control and stopping, but we're not getting anywhere near to what we have historically generated in fines and penalties. So I'd like, maybe we could get an update on that at our next meeting when the chief is able to attend. So I'll leave it with that, our request.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. The last report will be by our Supervisor Frank Reinhardt that will provide an update on the Swift Orange Line station construction.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Hopefully my internet holds up tonight. Let me share my screen here really quick. And what I want to do is share with you tonight some information on a project that we know has been going on for over a year now, the construction project, but it's really been kind of floating at our exterior, mostly to the west of us. But this is a project that this summer is actually going to come to Mill Creek. So I want to kind of refresh everybody's understanding of this project and answer any questions about how the community is being communicated with about this project as we go along. So this is Community Transit's Swift Orange Line. This is their third bus rapid transit route construction and the second one servicing Mill Creek. This is called the Orange Line. Community Transit is dedicated to their naming of routes by color. And this particular, we all, of course, already know about our existing one, the green line that runs south to north along Bothell Everett Highway through the city, and has an existing station at the Park and Ride at McCullum Park. The Orange Line runs basically east-west. It runs, it links up a number of stations. A number of stations will be shared stations between the Orange Line and the Green Line. And there will be one new station in Mill Creek. And then there will be this series of stations that you see that will be constructed in Linwood, in Snohomish County, all the way over to Edmonds College. So ultimately, this bus rapid transit route will connect the people of Mill Creek to 2 park and rides located west of our city, as well as Alderwood Wall and the future Link Light Rail station being constructed at Linwood City Center Station. Just to window in a little bit tighter on our little corner of this. So the thing to keep in mind with the bus rapid transit BRT stations is they always exist in pairs. So they always exist in pairs. Typically, they try and put them on either side of the street. Sometimes they can't get away with that, however. So in these locations here where you see the green line, this location here, which I'll talk about a little bit more further in this presentation on 164th Street, is actually a single station on 164th that pairs with an existing station on Bothell Everett Highway, just north of the intersection between 164th and Bothell Everett Highway. This orange line will have a turnaround point at McCullen Park, and that is actually the construction that you see going on now and has been going on actually, since construction started in the summer last year. So up until now, this construction activity has been pretty limited in Mill Creek, but I just wanted to show you a visual of, and this is just a graphic of a typical station. And again, we've seen examples of these already with the Swift Green Line on Bothell Everett Highway, but this is now an example of a station that we're going to see on 164th Street built this summer. But up until now, the construction here in Mill Creek has been fairly limited. You've seen the construction up at McCullen Park. There's going to be a certain amount of utility work under Dumas Road that's taking place right now. There has actually at the new 164th Street station, I'm going to talk about a little bit later here, has been some limited work already done. However, it hasn't necessarily been very publicly visible, at least up until last week. So last week, they got to a point where they needed to really kind of start breaking ground on this 164th Street station. So to orient you a little bit on what you're seeing here, the station location is at the northwest corner of 164th Street Southeast and Mill Creek Boulevard. This is the gas station that you see right here. Safeway is off to the east over here. QFC is to the south. The station location is going to go right here, just right on the south side of the gas station, and the sidewalk will get actually realigned so the sidewalk runs between the station and the gas station in order to provide the continuity of the sidewalk when they construct the station. The station does construct a lane in order for buses to pull out, but there's still a need to route pedestrians around where pedestrians are very often either waiting for a bus to show up at the station or looking at some of the station scheduling and signage about what they're planning on doing. What they have started so far is they needed to remove the 6 trees that you see removed in this spot. This is done because the aerial utilities that you see in here, as well as a transformer that exists in that footprint, all need to be moved before the station construction starts later this summer. So that is why the trees became the first thing removed in just the sequence of rolling out this construction project. So we haven't actually pinned down a construction project schedule for this station yet. I have been meeting off and on with the community transit construction team and the contractor CA Carey through the past year to just kind of keep an eye on the progress of construction. I've watched the station constructions as they've been going on in Linwood and Snohomish County to kind of get a sense for how CA Carey is managing the traffic. And of course, some of it has been some pretty tricky traffic because of just the sheer amount of traffic that flows on 164th, both east and west every day. So we don't have a schedule yet to share with you other than it is this summer. The construction team is cognizant of the Mill Creek Festival schedule. And so they're making sure that they're keeping a track on those dates so they can coexist with us during that period. But it started, as I mentioned last week, with the tree removals. Then during the next couple months, the utility providers, mostly Snohomish PUD at this point in time, but also the fiber operators that also have cable on those aerials. We'll be relocating it to a new pole. That will happen again in the next couple months. And so we'll be looking at probably during the summer, the 164 station going to construction. So far, Community Transit is indicating that they are on time to open the orange line by 2024. So they're pushing right along. We are actually the last major construction phase of this project to build this station. So the other stations I showed you on Bothell Everett Highway, there will be a limited amount of remodel work on those stations, but you will not see significant construction efforts on Bothell Everett Highway, certainly not to the scale that the city saw during the Green Line construction. It will be mostly changing some of the appearances of those and installing the new signage and the new programming that they need to install at the controllers so that both bus rapid transit lines function properly. Public outreach and notifications are primarily Community Transit's responsibility, and they have established a project contact tools, construction contact tools on their website. However, we're trying to do our part to help our community connect with those tools as much as possible. And that actually started last week when they were kicking off the tree efforts. Our communications and marketing team did a great job on jumping immediately on getting out a notification to the public via social media, and again, to steer the public in the direction of the Community Transit project contact tools. We have since generated a website for this project on our own city website that also directs now the public to these things. We want to make sure that we're communicating efficiently on this project. As this is Community Transit's project, that's kind of one of the lessons learned from the Green Line that Community Transit wanted to try and do a better connective job all the way through their construction projects with this orange line. So that's the end of my brief presentation. Are there any questions I might be able to answer?
Frank, I have a couple, and Mike might be able to answer this too. I don't remember the design. There's not a turnout for, or not, it's not a turnout, but not a separate lane for the bus to pull off of the lane of traffic, is there?
Right now, there is not. And they are going to try and work in I don't remember the widths that's the layout and whatnot, but they are trying to work in one lane on the north side of 164th. That is in fact why they could not do their normal station pairing on both the north and the south sides of 164th, because while they could find some room for the bus, for a partial bus pullout on the north side, they could not find any room on the south side.
Yeah, I bring that up because when the Green Line was brought to us, Mike probably remembers this and Vince probably does as well. We had a lot of discussion about the location of the station on Bothell Everett Highway on the southwest corner of the intersection. And we asked, why couldn't it be located a little farther south? Because we were concerned about the buses stopping and cars backing up. And I recall Community Transit saying, well, they're only going to stop for 10 seconds. Well, I come down 164th every morning, and very frequently cars are backed up into the intersection waiting for the Swift bus to get out of the way. And I raised the turnout because as a cyclist, and that is a bike lane, when I'm traveling to Trillium, I oftentimes have to go around into the lane of traffic around the Swift bus that is stopped at the light. So I know it's only a matter of seconds, but there are times when there are cyclists on the road and they're frequently backing up traffic. So I hope they can consider something to alleviate that or deal with that, because that's going to be a busy location when that stop is in place.
Let me offer this clarification. So what they're constructing by the gas station, it used to be 76, now it's whatever it is, that they're adding a lane there. So the bus currently stops in the travel lane for the regular local bus.
So we'll be able to pull out.
That's what the project is about. They're taking the trees out, adding a lane from there through the
Great.
bridge. So both the local bus and the Swift Orange Line buses will pull out of traffic and reduce that delay you see today for local buses.
Good, because it is a problem on Bothell Everett.
That's a particularly bad spot. It's so close to Bothell Everett Highway and all the traffic that's coming in. That's what happened last week during construction too. When you they had to take a lane during construction, and that's what Frank is warning us all about for this summer. Every time they do some construction, it's gonna be narrowed down to one lane. So you're advised to go some other direction.
Okay,
I
I
have
did not
one.
see what order the lights came on, so I apologize. I'm just gonna go from left to right. Councilmember Duque. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
That was my point. I'm very, I do not love the Swift setup at all. Now that we're living with it, honestly, the amount of backup, it's not 10 seconds. During key hours, I'm always concerned for cyclists. Because of the way it works out. And I don't know if there's anything additional as a city council we can do, whether it's a letter about that. I do appreciate hearing about the turnout. That especially on that corner, because it's so confused. So Frank, these are not necessarily direct questions that I have for you, but I just wanted to flag that I'm that process. My first question though is these actual stations, who is in, because they're in the city, does that mean we are the ones who are managing and taking care of them? Because I see along 132nd, the ones that are not on the Mill Creek side, how they've become just absolutely messes and just filled with stuff. And when I've reached out to community transit to find out about cleaning or any safety or security about them, I hear crickets from them. And so I'm hoping for these ones here in Mill Creek that we have whatever the number is or that line of communication about making sure that they're doing well, because we're not getting that responsiveness. I feel that we should be getting when it comes to security or safety for these stations. The trees on that corner, I hope that we are able to plant new trees. I understand that we can't do it in the exact locations, but there is still space in that corner. And I think we have rules about when you remove a tree in Mill Creek, you have to plant a new one. So I'd like us to figure out how to be able to get that together in that corner or however it looks, because it is pretty devastating to see that that tree growth and it's gone. I understand the moving of the of all the work that has to happen, but I think as part of the final touches for it should be that there's new trees planted there. And I think something that is really important that I didn't see in outreach, and it's maybe because it's community transit is the one who does it. But again, I don't necessarily have that strong faith about it, is there are a lot of people who don't look at social media who live in Mill Creek, who aren't looking at going to the landing page of the website to find the content. So having physical signs at these locations that's saying what is going to happen or how it's happening, I think is really important. There was a good opportunity there when those trees were removed to have something up. And even if it includes having flyers or signs along what exists of the green line to say orange line is coming this summer, I think is really helpful. And whether that is something that the city of Mill Creek can do for its residents, or Frank, if that's something that we can talk to them about, but having actual physical things there for the people who use it and who walk by, I think is really important. And I really also want to thank you for all your hard work on this project and having to be part of all these conversations.
So I just wanted to address a couple of points that you raised, Councilmember Decay. And I'm going to take these somewhat in reverse order. So right now, they have not really kicked off the construction for the station on 164. So what they brought when they started their construction, when they started their tree removal down there, is the informational A-frames that they have brought when they were occupying a spot for construction for a day or 2 days. So the good news was that community transit did bring those. The bad news was that the contractor that brought them didn't put them in a very good location. So we did give them some feedback on those first couple days and our experience with those first couple days to see if we can address that, because they actually had more challenges than just that one.
Okay.
So as far as permanent signage goes, I'll go ahead and pass that up the chain and see what community transit has in mind. I really don't know. They haven't necessarily shared what they are planning on posting for the orange line on the existing green line signs, but I will kick that suggestion back up to them, and we'll see what happens as far as that goes. So in answer to your question about the trees, so most of the trees had to go primarily because once you create that new lane that Director Todd referred to, once you create the new sidewalk, which is actually going to be a somewhat wider sidewalk, just because the current sidewalk was relatively narrow. We're going to end up with room to get one of the trees back at the other end of it. Everything else is going to end up mostly hardscape back there. But yes, in keeping with our usual practice for any construction project, where we can bring trees back into the green space and landscaped areas, we most assuredly worked with community transit to make sure that that was part of the plan. And is there any point that you had as a particular question from there, or Mike?
Yeah, so station cleaning, so they contract with someone who cleans the stations. I don't remember what the frequency is. What you're probably seeing on 132nd is that they're cleaning the station area that they're responsible for, and it's a property owner behind that has that buffer that they're responsible for. And I think it's probably a matter of the difference between Mill Creek and unincorporated, well, it'd be Everett right there, but Fred Meyer.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think that's part of the problem is it keeps becoming that like weird buffer area because it's only like that because they're of who is being attracted to that station. That station, that specific one, not in Mill Creek, happens to be the one I used to use all the time. And I don't want to take up our time here, but I'm uncomfortable using that station. That was the one I would take for the 412 to get into Seattle. And and the hours that I would use it in to be able to go to work. It's not that way. And I want us just to be proactive in thinking through what does that mean. So if it is the responsibility, the one, for example, the station that we're talking with the gas station, and if there is something like that where there's that buffer area, then making sure that that business knows, then that's their responsibility and that we are on top of working with them to solve it, not necessarily finding them or whatever it might look like, but really making sure that we have that relationship with them of what it looks like or for whatever it might be in those areas. So Frank, I think that's good because you heard also already Mayor's conversation about or topic about the cycle lanes. So.
Councilmember Allison.
Yeah, just one point of clarification. So new lanes going to go in on the north side, but the south side where the stop will be on the other side of the street, they're not going to be able to put another lane in?
So just to clarify, if I may, Councilmember Allison, there is no stop going in on the south side of 164th. They could not get the space. So the pair of the station to the north side of 164th is actually the existing station on Bothell Everett Highway, just north of the intersection of 164th and Bothell Everett Highway. So no, there is no station on the south side of 164th. They couldn't fit it in.
Well, I'd have to say that was the right decision to make because if there isn't a way to put a bus lane in over there, that would just have led to chaos.
Agreed.
Times. Thank you.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. In answer to the Councilmember Duquet's question, what recourse does the city have? The answer is pretty much zero. I raised these same concerns several years ago when this project came up for council vote. And once you pass, I believe it's Director Todd, the 30% feasibility stage, that you're kind of stuck with it. So here we are, we're stuck with it. I think the one thing that stood out to me then and still stands out to me now is that there are going to be a total of 6 different bus stops within 200 yards of one another. And if you've ever come down 132nd or Bothell Everett Highway, when the buses are during traffic, when they're right behind one another, and then 5 minutes later, you got another one coming down, it's a nightmare. So this is only going to add to the urban sprawl. It's only going to, I didn't like this project then, and I hate it more now, honestly. It's only going to add to the sprawl. It's only going to, be a continuation of additional traffic and additional carbon emit. So those are my concerns then. These are my concerns now. Thanks.
Councilmember Paddock.
Excuse me. Thanks for the presentation, Frank. I really am heartened that those trees, at least one of them, is coming back, and maybe we could find other places for the other 4 or 3 that have been removed, taken down. Maybe we can plant a couple somewhere else just in honor of those that were coming down. On the communication plan, is community transit owning up any marketing dollars for us to help with this communication plan, or is this all on the Mill Creek time?
No, and so consequently, that is one of the reasons why we are deferring back to them and their funding of their communications for their construction project, because trying to maintain a parallel effort, I mean, in addition to potentially creating misunderstandings, is also a case of we would be basically doing it voluntarily out of our own pocket. The sorts of measures we put in place are the sorts of low cost proactive measures and responsive measures that we would ordinarily use when we wanted to let people know, hey, this is going on. It's not a city project per se, but we feel that you need to know about this project. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm presenting tonight, to share it with you all as well.
Thank you. And then lastly, I did jot down that it would be interesting to hear from the chief or the deputy chief, public safety, just what their kind of patrol process is for these stations today and what it might change, how it might change with the additional stations. And then, you know, forewarned is forearmed. So maybe we could talk a little bit about over the next 6 months, either as a body here or with the staff on, you know, what if the Shell station or whatever Union Station over there ends up looking like the Fred Meyer stop? What do we do about it? And maybe we can be proactive about it rather than reactive. So.
Well, one of the things I would suggest in response to that last concern, Councilmember Paddock, is that the model that we probably should look at, plus or minus, is the bus rapid transit stations on the Green Line that already exist. There is a certain contrast between the regular service community transit bus stations and the bus rapid transit bus stations, and that's reflective in the sorts of maintenance that they do, as well as just the types of usages that you see at each of those locations. So I think whether one wants to either give them positive or constructive feedback on how they maintain their bus rapid transit stations, that's probably where you would want to make your apples to apples comparison.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Just one final point of clarification to a comment. Councilman, stops weren't brought to us for our approval. They were brought to us as informational presentations about what community transit was doing within the existing right of way. So the city has never approved anything. We were involved in the process because we were kept informed of what was being proposed. So thank you, Frank.
Can I just say one thing, Mayor?
Yeah.
But we did have the ability to make recommendations by council vote to put the bus stop elsewhere. Like there were several other areas that the bus stop could have went, and I think that's what I was talking.
Yeah, we didn't take any votes. That was clearly expressed by the council at the time, but I just want to make clear we didn't take any votes. So thank you, Frank. Thank you, Director Todd. Any other staff reports?
If there are no other questions on any other reports, and no other reports. Thanks.
Okay, I just have a couple things, since a couple of things I was going to report on have been covered. Thank you to Jody and Scott for continuing the City Chat Roadshow. We took it to Jackson High School last week. It's been interesting seeing the different turnout. This one was heavily attended. We had 3 or 4 members of the Student Advisory Board, students at Jackson, or I think members of the Key Club. A lot of discussion about housing, about the cost of housing, shopping carts, and getting volunteer opportunities involved. So I'm not sure when our next one is. It might not be till fall, but I think we're going to the library. We're continuing taking these out in the community, which I think has been good. The second point relates to our prior city chat at Coger. And I bring this up because on my morning ride this morning, it took me up Bothell Everett Highway about 6:30, and I got to the intersection with, I can never remember where, just before Trillium, the development on the east side of the road as you go up the hill. Starts with a W. Where we had the sinkhole a number of years ago. Sweetwater Ranch starts with an S. I'm sorry. Anyway, I must have been a minute or two. I got passed by a military police officer heading up with sirens ablaze there, and there was a serious crash there at that interchange. I don't know if speed may have been involved, but that was one of the things we heard at the Coger city chat. Very big topic of discussion was the speed issues on Bothell Everett Highway. So I look forward to conversations with the chief and staff about what we may be able to do about that. So I guess the only other thing I think I had was I'll be attending the General Assembly next Tuesday, and I'll report on that at our meeting in June, first meeting in June. Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start by saying I was very thrilled to be able to go to the employee appreciation and speak on behalf of the council and let everyone know how much we appreciate their hard work and how important they are to the city. And it was nice to see all those awards that went out and see the employees who've been here for 32 years. That's really impressive. Also, I went to the chamber lunch and a few things. This one, South County Fire was there. It was supposed to have been Chief Hovis, but he wasn't able to come. So we had Chief Eastman that was there, and just a really great presentation on some of the services that they brought to our city with their partnership. And I just want to point out, they were talking about how they are getting scholarships and they are giving out life vests for swimming for little kids, because it made me think about it when Brett Berg mentioned what she did about water safety, that their South County Fire is actually going out and distributing some scholarships that they get life vests to kids to help them be safe this summer. Also, we did have the mayor coffee chat, and I really just want to add, it was really nice to have the teenagers come out since we were at Jackson High School and hear their perspective of the city, because it's just a different view. They have things that they're thinking about that we're not necessarily always thinking about, and just to hear how they look at things and what's on their mind was, I thought, very informative and really helpful to see their perspective, because they are growing up to live here and they are the future of the city. So it was really impactful, I think, to hear the way they look at things. And I guess two more things. It's Public Works Week. I want to thank Councilmember Duque for reminding me of that. And so I just want to give a shout out to all our Public Works employees and thank them for all their hard work and everything they do for our city. And finally, I am attending the Snohomish County Tomorrow meeting on behalf of the mayor, because he is unavailable, and I will report back at the next meeting. Thanks.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. Really quick, congratulations to all the employees mentioned here by the city manager this evening for their employment with the city. Truly are an inspiration. Also, I will be attending the Memorial Day function on Monday. Looking forward to that. And lastly, just to remind everybody, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and 4 out of 10 Americans suffer from some degree of mental health one way or the other. Thank you.
And Martin, I trust we're going to notice a potential quorum at the Memorial Day event.
That is correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Steckler, any report tonight?
Thanks. I will be joining the mayor at the PRCC General Assembly event next week. Looking forward to that. I also had the honor of going to the recognition event that the city manager put together, and I wanted to bring up a point here on that. I have been to, it's been years since we've had a recognition event like this, and typically it's always been the police that we've had their awards, which were part of this. But seeing how the city manager is adding other employees into that and plans for doing more of that in the future, I just wanted to commend him on that, and the atmosphere of enthusiasm with the employees was significantly higher than something I've seen in quite a while. And I think it's important to call that out and recognize him for that. I have a question too for the city manager, though. We're all talking about mental health this month and all that. I've had a few requests through inquiries to me about next month, June, which is Pride Month. And last year, I think I gave a proclamation, which is great. But I noticed that we don't have any events or activities or anything associated with that on the calendar. So I was going to make a recommendation, which I have seen some other cities do, which is to go out and purchase a pride flag and have that go up along with our American flag, just as something to show our support of diversity in our city as well. And I think that's something that would be a great message to send out. So that is a recommendation to the city manager. And I'd love to see if we could do that or something else to recognize Pride Month, because that's becoming a bigger and bigger event with a larger and larger a group of people every year. And that's it for me.
Councilmember Allison?
Just another shout out to, I think it's wonderful that you were able to do a recognition event and, keep that up. People say that they notice a difference in the way all the staff feels when they come here. And it's been a happy staff ever since I started coming here for council. So keep up the good work. And I look forward to the Memorial Day service as well.
Councilmember Duque?
I also look forward to the Memorial Day service. Yes, I had a thing to say that it's Public Works Week, so thanks for all the Public Works members. I'll be at the PSRC General Assembly event, hoping to carpool.
I'm going to and from Linwood, so if you want to meet me in my office, I'm glad to.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Or I'll look to Steckler as well. Yep, okay, maybe we'll, whichever way it works out. I also wanted to say that I was able to attend I think I mentioned to all of you that I got the Golden Acorn Award for my local PTA. Well, they had their larger Everett School District PTSA where they acknowledge all of the Golden Acorn Award winners and the advocacy and the teacher and educators. And it was wonderful. I made sure to spend time with the PTAs that I don't know, who are not mine, that are in Mill Creek, to talk about things that they're interested in. So I made sure to network that way, and everyone was really kind and great. And I hope to be able to potentially for city manager Martin, because Yamamoto, we've talked about before about how to for him to continue to do his wonderful work, as you can see evidenced by how the library shined about his quarterly check-ins, but also to see what are the opportunities with our local PTAs for his connection there, if there is anything at all, or another staff member. So I'm happy to continue to work on those ways. And then on Thursday, I'll be part of that that one group I always talk about, the SNOCAN, our Arts Commission for the Snohomish County. So we have our meeting on Thursday. And so I will report out when after that. Thank you.
Last but not least, the father of the bride, Councilmember Paddock.
Thank you. Last but not least, congratulations again, Councilmember Duque, on the Golden Acorn Award. That's a rare prize. Congratulations on that. Takes a lot of work to get that. Staff recognition event was fantastic. It was really great to see most of the smiles at most of the folks that are scowling this way actually smiling at that event. So really, that was very heartwarming. City chat. I just want to reiterate the young people that were at that session. They dominated that session. They were vastly outnumbering the others. There were so many. And their questions and actually the dialogue after the questions, I was a little intimidated. I was very impressed by their conversations around middle housing and what it means to them as citizens that are growing up in this neighborhood. I was really impressed. Let's see, what was the other one I was going to say? Oh, the patrols and the speed and whatnot. Now that Seattle Hill and Village Green have actually become official speedways, it might be nice to take a look again with Chief White on what we're doing around patrolling those areas. I'm getting a lot of conversations around just how fast folks are driving through there. I see it when I'm out running. I see it when I'm driving. Fortunately, I drive like an old man, so I get to slow them down a little bit, but it's picking up. That's what I have.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to audience communication. Anyone in the audience? Go ahead, name, address in 3 minutes, please.
Hello, it's Hannah Skolbieski, 3005 146th Place Southeast Mill Creek. I just have a really quick thank you to Officer White and Detective White. He authorized that she could come and speak to a group of our Girl Scouts at a car care workshop hosted for free by Les Schwab a week and a half ago, and spoke to our 10th and 11th graders about driving safety and speeding and not using their cell phones, and she scared them, and it was great. But then she also talked to them a lot about how to keep themselves safe and how to keep officers safe. It was a great conversation. It was very informative for the girls, and all of them, including my cranky daughter, enjoyed themselves. So thank you for that, for that being available to us, and kudos to Les Schwab, a great local business partner. Thanks.
Thank you. Online, anyone like to address the council? Seeing a nod of heads. If there's no one else that would like to address the council, there's no objection. We'll adjourn the meeting at 7:54 and reconvene in June.
Yeah. Scott. Yeah.